What's up? Iron Tamer Dave Whitley here. I was doing a podcast interview yesterday with Coach Fury for his show. Shout out to Coach Fury. We were talking about bench pressing, and I was talking about some of the observations and lessons that I've picked up over the years working on it with myself and coaching other people, and about joint angles and alignment and all that sort of stuff. And Coach Fury asked me to shoot a short video explaining this one particular concept. If I am standing facing the camera, and that represents 12 o'clock on a clock face, when I get the weight in position, I'm going to angle my feet diagonally to the left if I'm pressing with my right hand, diagonally to the left, somewhere around the 10:30 mark on the clock. That'll vary from person to person, but somewhere along that diagonal. If you wanted to think of it as a circle with a plus and an X, it's along that X diagonal axis, forward, left for me. That's where my feet are pointed. And that may vary a little bit, but that's not really the purpose of the video. When I get into my rack position, my elbow goes on my hip behind me on that same diagonal line, which would be roughly 430, or the rear diagonal of the X. And that's where my alignment is. I'm going to shift so you can see a little bit better. As I push my hips back along that line to 430, my upper body moves towards 1030. If you watch closely, and I'll do a rep with weight here in a second, if you watch closely, the angle of my hip and the angle of my elbow add up to about 180, kind of like in geometry when you have three angles to a triangle, you add those together and it has to equal 180. If this hip is pretty close to extended, this elbow is pretty close to maximal flexion. And let's say that as I get in that rack position, it gets comfortable, just for ease of math. Let's say this hip goes to about 135 degree angle, which would be something like that. And this elbow, forearm to humerus, is roughly 45 degrees. You can see that angle there. As the hip flexes in the bench press, the elbow extends, and this is the important point that we were talking about. The hip flexes, the elbow extends opposite degrees at the same rate. So what that means is that when the hip gets to about 90, the elbow is about 90. When the hip gets beyond 90, the elbow gets beyond 90 the other direction. So I'm going to do a real-time rep with it and let you see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, I've got my good rack position established. And as this hip flexes, my right elbow extends until my hip is maximally flexed. My elbow is pretty well fully extended. If you are having trouble finding the rhythm and the timing of the bench press, video yourself and see if that's the case. See if your hip is flexing too much, or if your elbow is extending too much or not enough, or if the timing's off, like the hip flexes a lot and then you try to extend the elbow, or the elbow extends and then you try to flex the hip. That timing is critical, because what it does is it ensures that there's a vertical column of support with the weight up top, right up here, feet right here. And as the upper body goes this way, you can see if there were a straight line here, and the upper body kind of does this windshield wiper thing, you can see that this angle must increase as this angle decreases in order to maintain that straight line of support. So play with that, have fun with it, be strong.